So picture this. It's late 2021. The entire movie theater industry is, well, basically on life support. The pandemic shut everything down, and honestly, the future of the big screen was looking super grim. And then, one movie swings in and doesn't just break a few records, it might have saved the whole industry. But here's the big question. Did it also change what cinema even means? All right, let's get into it. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the massive crisis theaters were facing. Then, we'll do a deep dive into No Way Home and its two secret weapons, a brilliant digital campaign and the raw power of nostalgia. And finally, we'll zoom out and ask what all this means for the future of movies. Okay, part one. Did superheroes actually save cinema? It's really hard to overstate just how bad things had gotten for movie theaters. I mean, this was the question on everyone's mind. With streaming just exploding and theaters sitting empty, were people ever going to come back? And if they were, what on earth could be big enough to get them off their couches and back into those seats? If you want to understand just how big this crisis was, just look at this number. Cineworld, one of the biggest theater chains on the planet, lost over $2.6 billion in 2020 alone. This wasn't just a bad year, it was an absolute freefall. Theaters weren't just losing money, they were literally facing extinction. But right in the middle of all that doom and gloom, the legendary director Paul Thomas Anderson made this really bold prediction. He didn't say it would be some artsy film or a big drama. Nope. He pointed to a kid from Queens in a red and blue suit. He knew it wouldn't just be a movie. It had to be a full-blown cultural event. And boy, was he right.
Which brings us right to our case study, Spider-Man: No Way Home, and how it became this absolute box office phenomenon.
This is the number that sent total shockwaves through Hollywood. $260 million, just in the US, on its opening weekend. And remember, this is all happening in the middle of a pandemic. It wasn't just a hit, it was a massive statement. People weren't just willing to come back to theaters, they were absolutely desperate to. And to put that number into perspective, this wasn't just the biggest opening since the pandemic started, it was the second biggest opening weekend in the history of cinema. It beat Infinity War, it beat every single Star Wars movie. The only film that ever did better was Avengers: Endgame. This thing wasn't just another movie, it was a juggernaut. So how in the world did they pull it off? Well, that leads us right to part three, the TikTok marketing machine. Because let me tell you, a success this huge does not happen by accident. It was the result of a really, really smart digital strategy. So the first thing you have to get your head around is this idea of transmedia storytelling. See, Marvel doesn't just sell you a movie ticket. They build an entire universe that spills out of the theater and right onto your phone. Every little piece of content on a platform like TikTok isn't just an ad, it's another piece of the story, designed to pull you in deeper. And to do that, they totally mastered what academics call platform affordances. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying they really got TikTok. They didn't just dump a movie trailer on there and call it a day. No, they understood what makes TikTok special. The short videos, the remixes, the memes, and they built their entire campaign around that. Their whole strategy really boiled down to three key things. First, their timing was perfect. They dropped content at just the right moments to create these huge waves of hype. Second, they leaned into teaser culture, releasing this constant drip of tiny clips to keep people guessing and talking. And third, they used their actors to blur the lines between the characters and the real people, creating a much deeper connection with fans. And here's the proof right here. This chart shows you the engagement on the official Spider-Man TikTok. See those two enormous spikes? The first one, item 38, is December 2021. Boom, right when the movie hit theaters. The second one, item 12, that's March 2022, perfectly timed with the home release. This was not random. It was a precise, targeted campaign, and the data shows it worked like a charm. But all that clever, modern marketing? That was only half the equation. The other secret weapon was something much, much older and way more powerful. Good old-fashioned nostalgia. We usually think of nostalgia as just that warm, fuzzy feeling, right? But psychologically, it's an incredibly powerful tool. It connects us to what our brains feel is our more authentic past self. And here's the wild part. Studies have actually shown that when you feel nostalgic, your desire for money goes down. It literally makes you less worried about price and more willing to spend to get that feeling back.
And that is the absolute core of nostalgia marketing. Companies create new stuff, movies, games, you name it, that are specifically designed to tap into those powerful, positive feelings you already have for things from your past. They're not really selling you a product, they're selling you a feeling you already own.
And if you want to see the pure financial power of this, just look at what Disney did with Star Wars. The Force Awakens brought back the original cast, the original feel, and it exploded, making over $2 billion worldwide. It proved that a well-timed dose of nostalgia might just be the most profitable thing in all of entertainment. And that is the exact playbook No Way Home followed to a T. The movie's biggest secret, its biggest selling point, wasn't some new villain or crazy plot. It was bringing back actors from two entirely separate, older Spider-Man franchises. They didn't just make another sequel, they basically weaponized 20 years of our collective cinematic history and turned a movie release into a once-in-a-generation nostalgia bomb. But a success on this scale doesn't come for free. It sparked this huge, fierce debate that brings us to our final section. So what is the future of cinema? The whole conflict really boils down to this simple trade-off. On one side, you have the fact that these massive blockbusters are, without a doubt, saving the business of cinema. They're keeping the lights on. But on the other side, a lot of people are worried that this success is creating a kind of monoculture that's actually killing the art form of cinema by pushing out anything that's different. This is the argument you hear from people like Martin Scorsese, and it's echoed all over the internet. As this Reddit user puts it so bluntly, the fear is that cinema is just becoming content, disposable, predictable, and designed only to make as much money as possible, with no room left for risk or originality. But then you have the counter-argument. This user suggests it's more of a symbiotic relationship, that the enormous profits from the superhero movies are what actually give the studios the cash and the confidence to take a chance on smaller, more artistic films. The idea is, without the safety net of a blockbuster, guys like Scorsese and Nolan would have an even harder time getting their movies seen. And look, this isn't just a feeling people have. You can see the art form argument right here in the data. Back in 1975, the top movies of the year were a thriller, a serious drama, a crime film, a satire. The variety was incredible. Now you compare that to the 2010s, and it's just dominated by superheroes, sequels, and remakes. The diversity at the very top of the box office has clearly, undeniably shrunk. Which leaves us with this fundamental trade-off, this really tough question. Spider-Man No Way Home proved that these giant event movies can still bring us all together and save that theatrical experience we love. But at what cost? Is the price for saving our movie theaters a narrowing of the kinds of stories we even get to see inside them? And honestly, there's no easy answer to that.